Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the 2025 Annual Conference and Book Fair in Los Angeles, California. I am Laura Tohi, a member of the AWP Board of Directors. Here is a visual description of myself. I have white hair in front, and I'm wearing a dark navy blue jacket. The Association of Writers and Writing Programs is a small but mighty nonprofit organization that amplifies the voices of writers and the academic programs and organizations that serve them, all while championing diversity and excellence in creative writing. I am a member of AWP's Board of Directors, but first and foremost, I am a member of AWP. Membership with AWP provides me with writing resources year-round, but just as importantly, it allows me to support other writers, especially those who are just starting out. My membership dues help writers find meaningful careers and publication opportunities and make services like the Writer-to-Writer Mentorship Program possible. If you aren't already, I invite you to become a member today. We are delighted to bring you this event. I'd like to acknowledge and thank all of our conference sponsors and the literary partners hosting this event, Alice James Brooks. Our literary partners and sponsors allow AWP to present these extraordinary literary events and help us keep our conference affordable and accessible. Please join me in thanking all of our conference sponsors and partners for their support and participation. Now, before we start, I need to do some brief housekeeping. Don't forget to silence your phones. Remember, there is no flash photography allowed during the presentation. Respect seats marked as reserved for attendees with accessibility needs. Please give the authors about 10 minutes after the presentation to get to the book signing table before approaching them to have your book signed. And there will be a table outside these glass doors to the left, which is where the book signing will take place. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome CM Burroughs, who will introduce this fantastic event. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am mic'd up, but I love a podium, so I'll be here. My name is CM Burroughs. Welcome to Nurturing a Green Heart, Staying Soft in the Face of Adversity. Today, the poets Ayokunle, Falomo, Jennifer Espinoza, and Dorianne Laux will read poems from their latest collections. Then we'll converse to answer the questions, in a world of unrelenting violence, how does one tend a green heart? How do we refuse to harden in conditions where becoming hard seems so natural? When Alice James Brooks approached me to moderate this panel, it seemed a natural fit. I've been writing about the difficulties of occupying a body, loss, grief, and the sometimes impotence of faith for decades now, and yet I'm an exceedingly glad and grateful person. I have, in the language of this event, a green heart. Today's world is wild, well beyond my body and personal grief, and I'm grateful to have the act of writing to see me through it. So too do our poets today. And I'll read brief bios in the order that the poets will read. If an autobiography asserts being, then myth plays with memory and the facts of being in Ayokunle Falomo's autobiomythography of. Falomo's book figures experience of childhood, adulthood, and fatherhood. The African and American speaker of this book is free because he freely associates with the world around him and clarifies himself as a mirror clarifies what looks within it. The speaker does not take on so much as he takes in an early childhood in Nigeria, formative years in America, and then becomes a country himself, which is what one becomes to his child. From first poem to last, Dorianne Laux' Life on Earth thrives on and gives me what is difficult to sustain and even more difficult to render: hope, curiosity, and resilience. The first exclamation I penciled into the book came in the very first poem. If we come from dust and will return to dust, then we can find our way into anything. What else to say to a phrase like that but yes, of course. A book that contains resilience means that it also contains tests. In this case, the test is simply life on Earth. Lux's work is clear-minded and alive, if for no other reason than I wanted to wake up and see what happened next. Jennifer Espinoza's I Don't Want to Be Understood is clear about the threat that stands outside of the trans body. Yet the threat appears elsewhere, especially internally, during the speaker's trans youth and growth into womanhood. The definition of self is in constant flux through tremendous violence, as in the poem, You're Going to Die Today, wherein the speaker is going to die today because you were too lazy to put on makeup before you took your dog out for a walk. The speaker wayfinds through common weapons and cosmic wounds. The final poem begins, You'll try to destroy me in your own way, but resolves the trans body as magic that lives outside the law. Thank you and welcome, Ayokunle. Oh.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with these three incredible writers. The poetry world is vast and small at the same exact time, for which I am grateful. I am on the same press as Jennifer. CM was actually my thesis advisor for this book, so that is incredible. And the first poem that I will start with takes its title from a craft lecture by Dorianne Laux. A few years ago, before I could imagine that I would be sitting next to her, I was watching one of her craft lectures, and she said, the last line of every poem should actually be, and after that, everything changed. And after that, everything changed. Late afternoon, July, parked outside Kim's Tea House on Bel Air. I was recalling something about choice, though who's to say really the difference between leaving or staying. Like a honey-tongued evangelist, the air from the vent spurred the car freshener, Royal Pine, to move from side to side. And how much time did I waste watching that? If you ask me, Eurydice returned to Hades of her own accord, but Orpheus couldn't bear to tell himself the truth. Hence his stupid songs. What was done to me? What you did? Was it because you knew how much time we didn't have left, or did you just for the hell of it? Whatever it was, what I thought impossible never was, but nothing is, it turns out. Always the finitude of time, the blurry anticipation of something I cannot name or voice. Even in summer, I'm kind of blue, so what? And this is what I know of solace. Even Picasso was said to have painted for 3 years or so in shades of blue and green before his rose period began. Soon the summer will be over. How long is it? The distance between denial, where I yelled, "I can't believe it," at every tourist attraction, and acceptance, where I am yet to arrive. I keep walking. The trail opens into a cemetery, and it is a kind of reward, the lake waiting in the middle of a long hike. The view is nice, I'll give you that, but I am sore. As with one's life, each day is a satchel, and it contains as much as one can fit inside it. The antidote for loneliness is not company per se, but hell, I'll take it. Today, there's Nina in my ears, red cardinals, hawks, miles, ducks skittering on the surface of the lake, Langston on the mind. My name's the joy that fills the house. This name is mine. 5 snail shells arranged in a circle. Too often I forget, I forget my name, oh Sun Ra. What looks like a tightly braided rope but might be dung. This mushroom, like a dog's droopy ear, that squirrel, tiny enough to fit inside a child's palm. This butterfly, fluttering like a promise. As though it were a guide, I followed it, and in the end, a field. But then what isn't a field? In the middle of this one, an orange soccer ball like a personal son. My teeth bruising the skin of a peach, its juice dripping down my beard. I run through the length of the field all mine. Autobiomythography. In the beginning, there was a garden and then a fire, except it was no fire. But what to say of the furnace that was my mother's womb, and my father without whom there'd be no kindling? I must be ash. I mean to say I was born the son of a god whose throne you could not approach. Imagine it. The hymn of my immaculate blossoming. Oh, let me sing myself a song that's yet unsung. I, the son of a gong, son of a pitch too holy for the devil's mouth. Let me christen myself the son of a sun, and I will bask in my own light. Son of a phoenix, I walk out of every flame robed in a coat that can't be taken off. Some secrets, even the moonlight can't reveal. My father, he must have lost his wings to the fire, unblushing. I was born under a furtive sky. I mean to say the body is a country, this tangled history of flesh, bone, and blood, but who asked for it? My skin, this garment of fur, a flag forever in love with the flame, first of the flock. I was born by a river. I was carried here hanging on the beak of a bird whose name I do not remember. My mother, she was my first home. Her mother too, her first. Ask me what it feels like to be so far away from home, and I will say, I did not come here of my own accord. One of the really exciting things, at least to me, in this collection are the series of self-portrait poems in there. And my absolute favorite is titled Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird. And this is the poem I'll end with. And it is after the Frida Kahlo painting, if you're familiar with that painting. Self-portrait with thorn necklace and hummingbird. Always the body and everything that mirrors it. My forehead like the sky. My eyebrows, not unlike the wings of a dead hummingbird, converge at the bridge of my nose. Blood trickles down the neck like water down a rock. My eyes, two rivers that never meet. My lips, radish tint, desire. Lord, the things I know and wish to unknow. The butterfly's attraction to rot, for instance. How difficult it is to resist metaphor when I think about the short-lived existence of the dragonfly. How exacting it is to unknot the imagined self from the self that inhabits this body now. Nobody knows me best but me, it's true, but there is much I do not know. Where's God in all of this, I ask, Lord? Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. My guardian angels just watch, but don't or can't watch over me. The story ends, it does, the way it always does. The body a mirror, always. My hair done and wrapped. My body adorned in white, as though a bride. My neck ornamented with thorns. Excuse me. I have somewhere to be.
Thank you. I think we're overly mic'd. You know, they just want to make sure you can hear us. Okay, this is the epigraph for my new book, Life on Earth, and it's by Mary Ruffalo, who was also a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. There are only 2 finalists, so we called and congratulated each other. And it turns out that I'm using an epigraph by her for this book. And she said, I began writing because I had made friends with the dead. They had written to me in their books about life on Earth. And I wanted to write back and say yes, house, bridge, river, hair, no, maybe, never, forever. And the first poem in the book is the one that you quoted from, In Any Event. If we are fractured, we are fractured like stars, bred to shine in every direction, through any dimension, billions of years since and hence. I shall not lament the human, not yet. There is something more to come. Our hearts a gold mine, not yet plumbed, an uncharted sea. Nothing is gone forever. If we came from dust and will return to dust, then we can find our way into anything. What we are capable of is not yet known, and I praise us now in advance. And this is a poem called I believe it's called the Termopylaeum or the Thermopylaeum, I'm not sure which. And I took the bookmarker out because I thought I was going to read that poem first, but I wasn't, and now I can't find it. So here it is. Okay, it's the Thermopylaeum, and I've been fascinated by Pompeii since I was a little child. And there's a new dig, and in that new dig they found new artifacts. And so this is from the Daily Star, and it said, ancient snack stall uncovered in Pompeii. Back in 79 AD, people loved street food. All the young Romans flocking around the sizzling terracotta pots, the stalls frescoed with chickens and hanging ducks, hot drinks served in ceramic two-handled pateras filled with warm wine and spices. Their sandaled feet glimmered as they milled around, waving hellos, smudging one another's cheek with kisses, murmuring gossip, complaining about the crazy rise in the price of wheat. Soups and stews, skewered meats, stacks of flatbread, honey cakes, and candy made with figs. They sprawled on the steps or sat near a neighbor's open door, stood under a blur of windows, someone playing a lyre, children singing the Ode of Horace. Just like New York, before the pandemic, before the many retreated and retired to their living rooms to watch the news on a loop, alone with a cat or dog, a furry stay against the nothing, nothing, nothing of loneliness, their dreams a passport to fear. I used to see the excavated people of Pompeii, frozen in time, caught curled in sleep or kneeling, a couple fucking, though there is one of a possible father propped in what looks like an easy chair, a mother bouncing a child on her lap, as if they decided in their final moments to be happy, to go into the afterlife covered in ash, buried alive by joy. And this is the title poem from Life on Earth, called Life on Earth. The odds are we should never have been born, not one of us, not 1 in 400 trillion to be exact. Only one among the 250 million released in a flood of semen that glides like a glassine limousine filled with tadpoles of possible people, one of whom may or may not be you. A being made of water and blood, a creature with eyeballs and limbs that end in fists, a you with all your particular perfumes, the chords of your sinewy legs singing as they form, your organs humming and buzzing with new life, moonbeams lighting up your brain's gray coils, the exquisite hills of your face, the toy, the human toy your mother longs for, your father yearns to hold, the unmistakable you who will take your first breath, your first step, bang a copper pot with a wooden spoon, trace the lichen growing on a boulder you climb to see the wild expanse of a field, the one whose heart will yield to the yellow forsythia, named after William Forsythe, not the American actor with piercing blue eyes, but the Scottish botanist who discovered the buttery bells on a Highland hillside blooming to beat the band, zigzagging down an unknown Scottish slope. And those are only a few of the things you will one day know, slowly chipping away at your ignorance and doubt. You who are born from ashes and return to ash. When you think you might be through with this body and soul, look down at an anthill or up at the stars. Remember your gambler chances, the bounty of good luck you were born for.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very honored to be part of this panel with these beautiful writers. Those were such wonderful readings. I just feel very lucky. I kind of can't believe I'm here like both at AWP, but also just like in the world, like alive. And that's sort of what these poems that I'm going to be reading are about. This is a book about survival, and a lot of it is about kind of like the pain and terror that comes along with that, but also like the beauty and the wonder, like just marveling at the fact that I can be here, that we can be here. And I think that's so important and has a lot to do with what we're going to be talking about today with our panel. So I'm going to be reading a few poems from I Don't Want to Be Understood. The first one is the opening poem, and it was based on one of the several times I've been pulled aside trying to go through TSA to get on a plane, which is unfortunately a very common experience for trans people. This is called Airport Ritual. The following is a true story. An anomaly is spotted. A woman is taken aside. I am going to have to touch you now, an agent says. I am going to use the front of my hands on most of you and the back of my hands on your private parts. Is there anything you need to let me know before I proceed? I'm trans, the woman leans in to whisper, unsure if she means this as a warning or an apology. That's okay, the agent says as she grabs the woman's shoes. Would you like to take this elsewhere? Before the woman can answer, the thing in her pants that set the sensors off suddenly expands, tearing through her clothes and revealing an amorphous blob of cosmic energy. It is purplish and void-colored at the same time. There is an impossible shimmer to it. It grows outward, enveloping the agent, the body scanning machine, and the white dads in red baseball hats gawking at her predicament. Then the whole terminal. Then the entire airport. The military plans a strike in response. Some trans guy who fought for the right to kill people on behalf of an empire that hates him is chosen to operate the drone. Better optics, someone thought. When hit, the woman grows hundreds of times her size. The city of Irvine is pretty much toast. Fox News is floating the idea of forcing trans people into detention facilities until we're sure they don't all pose the threat of having expanding cosmic blobs for genitalia. It's polling well. Meanwhile, the woman at the center of the plasma, or whatever the fuck it is, just wants someone to say one thing to her that doesn't feel like kite string wrapped around an open wound in a warm, strong wind. But it doesn't happen. So she sings something to herself, a song she heard in a grocery store once, Michelle Branch, frozen food aisle, instant tears. She remembers her life, floats up into a cloud, gets carried away. No one can track her. She is dispersed, rained down upon the dirt and patchy grass where her old house used to be. Flowers bloom, people pluck them and give them to people they love. Everything is normal. Thank you. The next poem is called Every Day. It's about childhood. You'll feel fear as a blue sky, a green light, a line of people swaying in place like grass. One is always emerging into something, out of something else. You've traveled by light to get here. Each panic attack had its own frequency. You memorized the language. It barely touches you now. All you've lost is blood, your old home, bits of who you used to be embedded in stucco. Every day was ordinary. You'd wake up and pretend to be a boy. You'd go to sleep and dream of being a woman. Eventually, you never regained consciousness. This wasn't a decision. It's just what happens when you realize how far away stars are, how old the universe is, how a life is an open thing leaking out into the air around it. You are afraid of being seen. You are afraid of being named. Even as you flow from street to street, wrapped in dead roses, you'll remember who lives here. You can't wait to be able to say no to all of them. The next poem is called Makeup Ritual. This is not another feminist poem about the tyranny of Western standards of beauty. Or maybe it is. As a trans woman, I'm still not sure what I'm allowed to contribute to the topic. According to some, I exist only to reinforce gendered violence, my body a blade sliding up and down the legs of real women, forcing its way under their arms and carving the language of misogyny into every surface. Wow, who knew I had so much power? I don't even leave the house unless I've had time to build a world on my face and make myself palatable for public consumption. Is it so wrong to be afraid when I've seen what can happen? When I've had it happen to me? In my life, there is nothing more beautiful than dissociating in front of a mirror and drawing perfect lines across the flesh, wrinkle to wrinkle, eyes rolling up into themselves, plastic pulling lashes into little curls. I live to cover my shadow with blood, to cake my entire image. For me, this means something like safety, like a hit of oxygen from a falling plane. The first time I saw my face made up, I couldn't help but cry it all off. What will I call myself now, I wondered. It helps to have a name, even though a name is a room you can never leave. Okay, I'm gonna read two more. This one is called Birthday Suits, and it's a true story. I turned 24, and Dad decided to take another stab at making a man out of me. On his command, I drove us out to Hollywood, where you could get 3 sets of suits for $100. What a steal, he exclaimed, as though his enthusiasm would fertilize something that never existed within me. Regardless, I followed him into the outlet, and I allowed him to wrap the cheap, heavy thread around my tired shoulders, to salt the wound of my body with his idea of truth. I let it happen, but I did not forget what I was beneath the cover of the flesh. 5 million faggy mountains slicing through fields full of dreamed-up tongues and unnameable bluish grasses, each blade the length of a universe stretching inward toward a singular point of life-sustaining unlogic. Dressing myself behind the heavy polyester curtain, I listened as Dad held the suit guy hostage with the oft-told tale of the night he encountered real-life biblical demons. How at first he felt their presence tightening inside his chest, and then witnessed them crawling up and down his walls, and how he prayed and cursed them in the name of the Lord until they dissolved like sugar into the dark. And he never said this, but I knew he was convinced that they came for me next, and colored my nails, and stretched out my hair, and adorned me with flowers, and forced my inside places to whisper, "Woman, woman, woman," late each night at the moment just before sleep. And I knew he knew who I was becoming, and I understood what the suits were for. So I tossed them in the back of my trunk where they sat waiting for years, and the day I sold that car off, those suits were still in there. Okay, I'm gonna read one more poem. It's called "It Doesn't Matter If I'm Understood." It doesn't matter if I'm understood. You'll still try to destroy me in your own way. Maybe with your hands, maybe with your silence, maybe with your tacit approval of this machine. Here us women are, crackling like sparklers above a lawn, scraping diamonds from asphalt, giving praise to the mountains before us, our love and our grace and our tenderness, enough to change the shape of the universe. You say goddess or you say dead girl. We live in the margins, but don't get a taste of the joy of being there, not without loss, not without broken bones and bandaged flesh. Our condition is nameless, and we know this, so we drift and deflate and let the wind have us. But we don't stop living, even when we sense our impending ghost, even when we finger the dirt and think, home. Our life was always a thing of magic, and magic is what lives outside of law. One day, we will be allowed to exist, and you will never see us again. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the three of you. Beautiful readings. I've spent time with your books over the last couple of months, and I'm grateful for your poetry. And I want to ask questions today that start large and distill. So my first question is, how do you define vulnerability?
With our poems. I mean, these were 3 very vulnerable readings, you know, and to be vulnerable in public. It's one thing to be vulnerable by yourself when you're with someone you love and you know they're going to accept you no matter what. But with strangers, you know, that's like, right? I mean, that's like just tearing out your heart and saying, here, you know, don't hurt this, you know. So I think it's defined also every day by who we are. I mean, the fact that we come out of our houses is vulnerable, you know? I mean, it really takes so much to be this vulnerable creature milling around among other vulnerable creatures and not hurting each other, you know? And especially when we're allowing those vulnerabilities to reveal themselves as openly as poets tend to do. And that's one of the things people love about poets, is that they're willing to reveal those very things we're most afraid of, you know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think of vulnerability as kind of like a generative fearlessness, where like sometimes, you know, it's important to have fear in some situations
Yeah.
or to not do certain things.
Yeah.
But I think that when you give yourself over to fearlessness and you just kind of say like, fuck it, that can not only like lend towards situations that benefit you and the people around you with your vulnerability, but it also feeds into itself, and it allows you, like, in future instances to look back and be like, okay, if I could be vulnerable in this way, then I can continue that vulnerability. So for me, an important part of vulnerability is that it's self-sustaining and that it like teaches you something.
I love that, self-sustaining.
Yeah.
I love the idea of vulnerability being generative, and also just like vulnerability, like you said, being just like the baseline of what it means to be a human being. I'm gonna tell a story and kind of work my way back to the answer. Maybe because I just recently got a haircut, and after I get a haircut, I feel really, really good. But I also understand that interaction with me and my barber as a very vulnerable thing in the pursuit of beauty. I say that because he has a sharp instrument in his hand, and he's kind of tilting my head some way, right? And I offer him my neck, right? And he kind of shaves, right, and trims, right? And sometimes cuts, right, unintentionally, right? And going into his chair, I am aware that that might happen, and yet I offer him my neck, right? Because I know that he's gonna make me beautiful at the end of it, right? And I think that's what vulnerability is, right? To offer your neck to what might ultimately kill you, right? And to say, yes, right? I might bleed in pursuit of this thing, right? But this is the thing that's ultimately going to keep me alive. And I think that's what I'm trying to do in my work, right? That's what I go to poetry for when I read poetry, to say, this might undo me quite literally, yet I cannot live without it.
Yeah.
Those are gorgeous responses. So who were your models for writing about vulnerability, and what did you learn from them?
Sharon Olds, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you know, she's like that animal that just lays there and says, okay. You know, I trust you not to slip me open and eat my young out of my belly. You know, I mean.
Yeah, Satan says it's like
Pardon?
Satan says it's like the most daring, I feel like, poetry book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
First time I read that, it was like my whole insides were showing. Yeah.
Wow. For me, I would say like ultimately Lucille Clifton. My God.
Another one.
Oh my God. Like poem after poem. Right. The poem that is sort of like the anthem for my life is, the "Won't You Celebrate with Me" poem.
Me.
And what what she did and what she continues to do every time that I read that poem in 14 lines is just miraculous. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it comes back to Emily Dickinson always. I just love and have been inspired in my own work by the way that she literally twists syntax and language and images in order to very bravely reveal the inner depths of her being. And I love that she wasn't afraid to get weird with it. And that's really important to me, especially when being vulnerable, when being fearless. I think part of that is embracing strangeness and seeing strangeness as a portal to somewhere else, to transcendence, or to getting through whatever the issue is that you're working through within yourself. So yeah, Emily Dickinson, definitely.
Y'all were sharp on that. I thought y'all would have some wavering. So who are your models for living on how to create resilient speakers?
My mother, shout out to Ruth Falomo. Oh my God, yeah, that woman, I sometimes resent her for it. It's just let me wallow for 10 minutes, I promise. It's not gonna be more than 10 minutes. And she's already saying prayers and psalms and, she holds a mirror up to my face to remind me constantly of who I am. And sometimes I'm just I don't want to look right now. Because she's done it over and over and over and over in her own life, and I have seen that. So yeah, she's my number one model.
Right.
Yeah. I would just say my mother and your mother should get together.
I'll let her know.
Yeah. I mean, mothers, what more heroic figure is there in the world, than a mother? And you don't have to be a mother to be a mother. Who are all the people that mothered you that weren't necessarily mothers, but they had that spirit that, that kept saying, you can do it. It's really hard. And I get that. I know how hard it is, but you can do it, And that's what mothers do. They teach you resilience, because without it, we wouldn't be here, They show you how to survive the worst of things and even the best of things. So I'd say my mother. Are you gonna opt out?
Oh, no, sorry, I wasn't sure if you were finished. I was just so entranced by what you were saying. Yeah, I think my model for resilience, I would have to say, would be broadly the trans community. When I think about trans elders who showed me that this life was possible, that's a big part of it, but also younger trans folks as well. In my day job, I run a queer resource center at a college, and I work with a lot of young college-aged trans students, and just seeing their resilience and the ways that they just get up and show up to school and go to work and live their lives in the face of just some of the most horrific shit you could imagine. How dare I wallow? How dare I ever despair when I have I've built such a privileged life for myself. And so when I look around at the trans community and just the ways that we keep existing, and the sort of beautiful defiance that I think this community has, yeah, it gets me up in the morning. It makes me want to keep going.
But we get to wallow, right? And I always saying, there's always someone to pray and sing.
Always room
to
for
get through it. Yeah. So how does the creation of a speaker in a poem allow you to confront your own vulnerabilities?
I don't know. The speaker.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that too. It's me, surprise. The speaker thing was like new to me, right? Like sitting in workshop and people would be like, the speaker of them, like, it's me.
Right, right.
Just say Ayo, it's fine. But I mean, I do love the artifice of having the speaker though, or like having a speaker or multiple speakers. And I think ultimately with this book was like leaning into that, right? To kind of wear all the masks that were possible for me to kind of sit with the truth of like myself as a person, right? And some of the inconsistencies too, and the contradictions, right? The Whitmanian, model of like understanding the self as multitudinal, right? And so, to sit with the parts of myself that might contradict and to say, yeah, you're also welcome into the poem. One of the things that kind of guided my idea of like the multiple speakers in this collection in particular was like listening to folks like Baldwin, right? There is an interview of his where he says, I'm walking down the street, you're walking down the street, and you see the cop on the street. The cop on the street is also you, right? And just like understanding the self as, you see a version of yourself in like other people that you meet, right? Ayokunle, the persona poet, right, was also a model, right? The fact that she could go down like rabbit holes that were like so insane sometimes to think of. Like, why would you want to write a poem in the voice of this person that, we all would deem, horrible, right? And to yet inhabit that persona and reveal something miraculous, something remarkable about the person that is horrible is very, very interesting. Patricia Smith does the same thing as well. Right? Gwendolyn Brooks does the same thing as well. Fred Moten was also another model. Miłosz was also another person. The consent to not be a single person, right? It's just like everything and then, you have Terence, and then Maya Angelou referencing Terence, like everything that is human is also human to me. So if somebody can do something, that also means there is something inside of me that is probably, it's weird to think of, right? But it is also possible that I might be able to do the horrible thing, right? And the avenue of poetry is to say, okay, if I go to the limits of it, in what way can I offer for myself a life, a space where I don't do the horrible thing? And there is a possibility of like salvation for myself and potentially for readers who might encounter the work.
I love your roll call there.
All of these names and voices are in my head all of the time. So I just want to share with y'all too. You can go home with some of them.
There's a book fair right over there.
I have no idea. I can't even remember the question.
Well, Ayo covered it so well. Well, so how does the creation of a speaker allow us to address our vulnerabilities? And one way I think of this is that sometimes we write beyond ourselves. And by that I mean we write things that we have not yet done, cannot yet do, and or admit, right? And so how do we create speakers that can appease some part of ourselves or exercise something that we're, in the midst of?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's innate. It's an innate property of, because writing a poem, in the first place, is a ridiculous gambit. I mean, it's not easy to write a poem. It's easy enough to write a poem that is kind of good, but I mean, one that really, like you say, is pushing you beyond your own borders, but you don't even know what those are until you start writing the poem.
Right.
And then you're going, oh, should I have said that?
Yeah.
And then But otherwise you're just
writing. So I don't know, I think it's so much part of the process, or so intrinsically designed in our brains, you know, that we can't even analyze it or catch it at the moment that it's happening, you know, so that you could talk about it. But that
Sounds
would
good to
just
me.
be me. I don't know.
I really liked what you were saying about like having hesitation towards this idea of the speaker as a separate entity. I had like a very similar experience. I like wrote a lot of poetry and even published 2 books before I ever stepped foot in a creative writing classroom and heard people like going on and on about like the speaker. And so for me, yeah, it was always like, what? It's just me. I'm just writing poems about my life and I'm not thinking too deeply about it. But like similar to what you were saying, I think that when you start to think about the speaker as this sort of divergent self within you, it opens up a lot and it helps me. Like I look back at some of my older poems and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I thought I was writing directly from myself, but I was actually like creating something within myself, like new parts of myself. When I think specifically about the first poem that I read today, the airport poem, that was one where I really felt like in the process of writing it, I became, like something clicked and I became aware that I was writing a speaker, that I was writing this like different self. I wrote that poem literally like an hour after I had the experience of being pulled aside by TSA and like patted down in front of everybody, and it was like horrible and traumatic. And I just like went to the bathroom and cried and then went and sat in my seat and got on the plane. And I was sitting there on the plane and I was like, I just want to write about this. And it didn't start out as a poem. It started off as like kind of like a journal entry or a diary entry or something like that. But then as I was writing it, I started feeling like the musicality come in and something clicked. And I got to that moment where there's that turn and it becomes this like science fiction kind of speculative thing. And I was like, oh shit, I'm inventing this speaker who is like saving me from this trauma that is literally starting to bloom like within my body and my brain because this just happened. And in writing that poem and in giving this speaker part of me like a platform and a world to live in, it somehow helped me like process and somewhat displace like the trauma of that experience so that I didn't end up carrying it with me into the future. Like I was able to kind of just like move through it or brush it off in a way. It didn't have as profound of an effect on me as I might have expected something like that would. Yeah,
The poem got to carry it away.
exactly.
Wonderful.
What you hope. That's what you hope for.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been thinking about the notion of difficult poems and poems that are difficult to write. And I'm wondering what poems in your book, the books you have with you today, what poem was the most difficult to write? And I think we have time if you could read it for us and talk about why that poem was so difficult to write. It might be craft, it might be subject.
Craft. I know we're all just sitting here going,
Like, which was the most difficult?
Yeah, for me, I know the poem that is the most difficult, like right off the bat. Because it was one of the last 2 poems I sort of was like, hi, Carrie, like, can we add this to the manuscript? They were not in the version that, you know, you looked at. This was very, very close to like after all the deadlines were like, you know, set. And it's a poem that I started, right? But I just couldn't get myself to say the thing that needed to be said in the poem. And I knew that I was gonna regret the book if the poem was not in there. The book would not feel like what it is without the poem. And I hope it is evident why. I'm not gonna talk too much about it. I just read the poem. It's called Self-Portrait with Truth at the Bottom of a Well. And it is a Markov sonnet after George Abraham. And the Markov sonnet is pretty much a tercet line framework that kind of repeats itself. And then over the course of repeating itself throughout the length of the poem, certain things get deleted, right? So you don't ever go back to the thing. You just keep repeating and repeating. So the thing before it gets deleted, you repeat the thing after it, right? And the thing after it, those get deleted. And you sort of like keep going until you reach possibly an unending, right? But then you have to end the poem somewhere. Though tungsten framed, the truth is not unlike water. Let me say it, what I must before night casts its cloak. Somewhere a photograph of me in yellow uniform. Before night casts its dark cloak, let me say what I must. Somewhere there is a photograph of me in yellow uniform, the same shade as the teeth of memory, my shirt undone. Somewhere there is a photograph of me in yellow uniform, the same shade as the teeth of memory, my shirt undone by the kind of hunger one can never rid one's body of. Undone. My shirt's the same shade as the teeth of memory. There is a kind of hunger one can never rid the body of. Much like the body is a church, the body is a library. I have the kind of body one can never rid of hunger. Much like the body is a church, the body is a library. There's nothing made that cannot be unmade by hands. Much like the body is a church, my body is a library of nothing that made by hands cannot be unmade. What is a life, if not a seam, a song unstitched by time? Is there a thing made that cannot be unmade by hands? A life is never what it seems. A song unstitched by time is trapped inside my body. I've always wanted its escape. A song unstitched by time, a life is never what it seems. I'm trapped inside a body I have always wanted to escape. Inside this poem, the truth is crouching on all fours. I'm trapped inside this body I have always wanted to escape. Inside this poem, the truth's an animal crouching on all fours. In Jerome's paintings, truth assumes the form of a woman. Inside this poem, the truth's an animal crouching on all fours. In Jerome's paintings, truth assumes the form of a woman. In the painting I love most, she sits at the bottom of a well. In his paintings, truth assumes the form of a woman. In the painting I love most, she sits at the bottom of a well, naked, and with her right hand she holds up a haloed mirror. In the painting I love most, truth sits at the bottom of a well, naked, and with her right hand she holds up a haloed mirror. What is the name for it? What I in haste have called a life. Naked, truth holds up a haloed mirror with her right hand. I have no name for it. What I in haste have called a life. It aches to want, but I have no name for what it is you want. I have no name for it, what I in haste have called a life. It aches to want, but I have no name for what it is you want. I know shame like one knows kin. I know its middle name. It aches to want, to have no name for what it is I want. Like a kin, shame knows and calls me by my secret names. I do remember being a boy without a name for everything. like a kin. Shame knows and calls me by my secret names. I do remember being a boy without a name for everything. Unclothed, behind closed doors, I danced with other boys. A man now, and still I have no name for everything I am. Unclothed, behind closed doors, we danced the dance we did not know to call a dance or sin, just wrestling.
Thank you.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Wow. Just need to like sit with that for a second. I'll read something really short. The most difficult poem for me to write in this book is about my father. And as you can imagine from the birthday suits poem, he's quite the character. But I had a really difficult childhood growing up, and I've never quite known how to like write directly about the things I experienced. And for me, a lot of like what brings me to poetry, or a lot of like the magic of what happens in a poem, is embracing things that feel contradictory, and like existing in the tension or the space between things that feel like they might be opposites or at odds with one another. And so in thinking about like wanting to write about my childhood and write about my father, I really wanted to write a poem that was like empathetic in a way and understanding towards like his own soul and his own situation and like the things that make him like human and messy, but also still like holding him accountable and carrying like the righteous anger that I have towards him at the same time. And it was really difficult to get into that space. It's easy to just go fully empathetic with it and be like, oh, it was all fine, actually. He's also damaged. It's a lot harder to do that while also carrying like the anger that I feel, that I still feel towards him. So this is a pretty short piece. I'll read it really quick. It's called, As He Killed Me, I Imagined Him. As he killed me, I imagined him floating through the years of his life, pantomiming violence, eating flowers bound in fleshy vines, a forest unto himself. I couldn't help but feel each moment as my own. Voiceless fists swinging at invisible walls, housing the truth of a manhood composed by exclusion, a saddening love, emptied and unfeeling, drawn helplessly to its roots, wondering what in this future can be spared. He says light beams and God and spirit-tongued mystery into my darkness, but the darkness fights back, thrusts itself into every space of empathy, my softly beating curse. Once I cried for the smell of grass, its blood filling the air, my knees stained green with the world. Now I drift around, listen to the pain of things, don't allow my ghost to hurt anyone.
I was going to read a ghazal or ghazal, just because of the form. And then you went on mine's very short. Yours went on, your formed poem forever. I don't know how you sustain it. And the most difficult poem for me to write is probably too long to read. And so I'll just read the second most difficult poem. And they seem always to be about my sister. And the long one is called Snow, which is really about her addiction to drugs. And really kind of an indictment of America, so it sort of has to be long, right? And this is a very short one about her called Praise. She sat on the lawn like a truck up on blocks, naked as a jaybird, screaming like a banshee, cursing like a sailor, way down in the San Diego dumps. She was flapping her arms like a flightless bird, a chaplainess dandy, pumped up on her own concoction of OxyContin and Vicodin, street codeine and speed, grass blade stains on the caps of her knees, dirt clods flattened under her heels, armpits unshaven, blonde thatched lawns, her bone of contention, salt in her wound, until the cops arrive with a scratchy blanket and zip tie cuffs, more moves now than a bowl of Jell-O, a jar of bees, as the cops can't stop 'em, can't commit a crime without 'em, grab a hank of her steal your thunder hair. And she's ready for the funny farm to drive her up a wall, trim her sails, go at her with a hammer and tongs, turn the tables and bend her over backwards, a little more than she bargained for, this mad woman pissing her mad woman's red piss. Now her head's a pummel, beating up the back seat, as the cops take off their hats and mop their brows, ask me who the hell she is. And I say, she's my sister, so you better be careful. This shit runs in the blood.
Goodness.
Oof.
That's
the short one.
ending. Well, all right. Speechless. So we do have about 7 or so minutes left. I do want to open it up to audience questions if anyone has some. If you yell at me, then I'll repeat the question for everyone.
Hi, I just want to say I've been getting full body shivers from all of the work that you have been sharing. Thank you for that. I have been struggling to believe in writing at a time when so much is being dismantled. And I came here because I wanted to know how you have recommitted this art form that we share when so much direct action of other kinds is also needed.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's something I've struggled with a lot. There have been periods of time where I've considered like giving up writing, because I'm like, why am I doing this? What is the point of this? But I think it comes back to like what we're talking about with vulnerability and this idea that like, how can we even have the strength to take the direct action that's necessary to resist the forces that are making this world a worse place every day? Like, how do we have that strength if we don't tend to ourselves to begin with? And how do we stay vulnerable? And for me, like such an important part of tending to myself is engaging in writing poetry, reading poetry, being in community with poets and writers, and like feeling the magic that can bloom from that. And for me, that's just like the first step in the process of being able to get out of bed in the morning and be a person and like fight back against all the horrible shit that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I finally get to read my list that I made for my comments on this panel. And one thing is that we have a bunny. And if you want to feel better about what's going on in the world, just get a bunny. And then, if you can't get a bunny, because that's really the only thing that can keep you from going crazy right now, is to have a garden. Really helps a lot. And of course, to read poems, to write poems, and to limit the news. You know, I only watch Rachel Maddow. She was on once a week on Mondays, but then she decided to do 100 days, so I'm screwed. And even then, I limit myself. You know, every once in a while, I just can't do it. Instead, I hang with the bunny. And then, yes, join resistance groups. I mean, you know, our work is mostly internal, you know, and takes a lot of time and aloneness and all the things you don't associate with that, you know, but, you know, it really helps even if you're just writing postcards or letters. Vote, of course. And then watch a video with Dick Van Dyke and Coldplay. You've all heard of Coldplay, obviously, or Dick Van Dyke, but those two together, and it's only a maybe not even 10-minute video, and it's just like a bunny. It's like afterwards, you're just like, there is good in the world. There are good people, innocent people, free people, loving people. There are heroes. There are, pianos. There's an old man dancing barefoot. I mean, it's just so beautiful. And I think that's the only stay against violence and horror is beauty. And that's what we do. We try to make beauty. Even out of incredible sadness and sorrow, we try to make beauty because it's the only thing.
It's the only thing we got, yeah.
And what comes out of beauty, of course, is love. And so you can only fight back by doing what you know how to do. And since we don't know really how to do violence, we may know it in our heads, or we may, but it's just not us. You don't become a poet because you go, I want to kill somebody. Well, maybe you do, I don't know. But if you're Frank Bedart, maybe, but probably not, and like Young Lee says, all poems are really love poems, even if they're not, they're love poems, I don't know, that's all I can say without crying any more than I've already cried. Please, save me from myself.
Other questions? Yes.
My question is, when you write, who are you writing for?
When you write, who are you writing for?
My bunny. To the big bunny in the universe, Who are you writing for? I'm writing to myself. I'm having a conversation with myself. I'm saying, God, it's so weird. Like, well, what about that? Can you say a little more? And I go, well, yeah, like the thing with the place and the, really, could you be more specific? How about a metaphor? That could be helpful, So yeah, it's just this conversation with yourself and trying to make a shape out of it, like the shape of a woman, like that shape is what you have. You have some shape in you that you're trying to get out onto the page.
That's beautiful. I love that image. Yeah. I'm writing for myself as well. And, you jokingly say the bunny, but the equivalent of the bunny for myself is my daughter, who is also an extension of myself. So I am writing, for her as well. My book is dedicated to her, and it says for OG as record. Because I feel like I am giving her a record of what a life looks like. I have lived so many lives in this short life, and she won't get to see it unless it's documented.
You can add me to team writing for myself. Yeah, exact same answer. For me, I begin with writing for myself, but then I'm also writing for the world because I'm a part of the world, like I'm in the world, and I see myself as like inseparable from everything around me. And so like I begin with the self, but it's just as we talked about with like the speaker becoming this divergent thing, this other self within you, it begins with me and then hopefully radiates outward and does some kind of work, whether that be through people who encounter and engage with my poetry or the ways that it changes me and how I encounter and engage with the world and with people around me. And I hope that the work I do makes me a better person to be around, a kinder person, a more vulnerable person, someone who does more good things in the world than bad things.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Beautiful. And on that note of good, we're finished with our event today. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a great rest of your conference.
Can we do another round of applause for CM? Thank you so much.